Now I may request the my friend from Slovenia, Jos Tarik, to deliver his talk on routine start trimming of dairy cattle.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for introduction. Just a second. Okay, okay, now we have it. Thank you very much again for inviting me to this interesting conference. I'm very pleased to attend it. I come from Slovenia. This is the country in the middle of the Europe. You can see it here, the red dot. So this is Slovenia, and the capital city is Ljubljana, where I come from. And just recently we got some snow, and everybody is with mask, of course, due to the COVID. And this is our rectorship building of the university. But let's go to our topic, which is trimming of claws in cattle. This topic is a very, just a second, it's a very hot topic still. You can see, I don't know why it's not going forward. Okay. Okay, as you see on this image, this is a very critical topic because in most herds, about 20 to 30% of cows are lame. And most of the lameness comes from the claw pathology. But this is just the average situation. In many herds, the situation is even much worse. The consequences of lameness are multiple, like reduced milk yield, reduced fertility, early culling, and then also lower feed intake, which is connected with negative energy balance, immunosuppression, and of course, injuries and culling of animals. So if you can see on the right diagram that veterinary costs are relatively small in this problem, but we have a lot of costs in reduced fertility and in reduced milk yield. And of course, lameness is also a very serious welfare issue because none of 5 freedoms of animals is fulfilled in lame cows. As you can see, they cannot get to the food, they are in pain, they have injuries, and of course, they feel discomfort, distress, and they can't behave normally because they are lame. As you maybe know, claw diseases are polyfactorial in origin. So we have a myriad of causes that result in claw diseases. But one of the main or very important one is also bad claw care which is insufficient. So we are going to tackle this side of the etiology. So we are focusing on functional claw trimming, which wants to achieve that the contact bearing surface of a claw is larger and that the distribution of forces in the limb is more even and on the parts of the claw that's supposed to bear force of the weight bearing. I saw that many presenters before me showed anatomy and ultrastructure of hoof in horses. The cattle hoof or claw is similar to this, just it has some peculiarities, which I would like to stress. So, as you know, cattle have 2 claws, and so just for orientation, when we are pairing claws, it's good to know which are the parts. So we have heels and heel bulb, then we have axial is in the middle, and abaxial is lateral wall, and then we have sole and interdigital space, which are important. And you can see the dorsal wall here. The dorsal wall is on the dorsal part and sole and heel bulb. And one important feature is also the heel and the sole cushion. Sole cushion, which actually works like an amortization of the leg. As also previously mentioned, we have different qualities of horn produced by the corium, and so the corium has also different structures. The hardest is of course the wall corium horn, and then we have sole horn, but much softer heel horn, like you can see here. The bearing surface is heels, and then is the wall, also the axial part of the wall, this more short part, and the sole. Just the axial sole is not weight bearing. And this is also one feature that we have to tackle when doing the functional claw trimming. The corium grows from the horn grows from the basal layer of the epidermis, which is getting cornified. So we have stratum spinosum and then the cornified horn. The growth of the wall is about 5 to 7 millimeters per month, and the sole is about 3 to 4 millimeters per month. So if there is not enough wear of the horn, we get overgrowth and also uneven distribution of forces in the hoof. So it's important that we frequently trim claws, but the first rule should be don't trim too much, because we don't want to harm the cow. It's important to not injure the cow. But there is no when is the best time to trim claws. And the frequency of claw trimming is very individual from herd to herd. So we don't have like a rule of thumb, we should do like this and that, but it is adapted to herd, to animal, to surfaces where animal walk. So it's very different. But usually cattle, cows are hoof trimmed at dry off or before turnout if they are on pasture. And it's also advisable to trim at the beginning of the second half of lactation, if it's necessary. But it's always the important thing, the horn that stays on the hoof, not the horn that we take away, because the horn that stays on the hoof is supporting the cow and we have to preserve it. So it's very important not to pare too much horn away. When we start claw trimming, it is good to do at least the basic assessment of claw health. So it's important to check the interdigital space and then the skin above the heels and around the coronary band, and then to assess the temperature of each claw. And possibly if we have a lame cow, we can also test it with hoof testers, just to check if there is some painful condition localized in the hoof capsule. As a rule of thumb for cattle is that most of lameness comes from the claws, and about 90% of lameness due to claws involves the hind feet. And again, 90% of this is from the lateral claw, which is much more overburdened and usually overgrown. So, and it's the focus of pathology most of the time. So when we start to deal with the case, it's good to know this. Some dimensions of claws for Holstein Friesian cows or similar breeds. These are larger breeds. So the length of the dorsal wall should be about 9 centimeters, and the angle is about 50 degrees in front feet and 55 degrees in rear feet. It's also important to have the heel height, which should be about 3 to 4 centimeters. And the sole thickness, which is also one very important feature, it should be at least, let's say, 6 millimeters, because when cow walks, it's important to have that it has good protection. The equipment for hoof trimming or claw trimming is, of course, a proper chute. Then we have pincers and cutters for wool, and we have different hoof knives. And nowadays, at least in the routine hoof care, hoof grinders are very popular and very effective for work, but it's important that they have specially adapted discs for grinding, because if we use inappropriate discs, we can actually overheat the claw and then cause injury. So the discs are usually with kind of rough, or they have blades with blades, which are also very good discs, but these are much more dangerous because they cut much faster. Then, of course, we need also rasps, and for this disinfection and cleaning of equipment between cows, and personal protective equipment is also important. Then from the past, it's one tip how to correct claws. In front feet, usually the medial claw is more overgrown. And in the hind feet, lateral claw is more overgrown or pathologically changed. So the medial feet in the hind feet is like kind of a template for the more pathologically changed lateral claw, but in reality, this can actually lead to a mistake, that we over trim the lateral claw, because if the difference is significant, it can be also that the bone structures and soft tissues are larger in this bigger claw. And if we take as a template the medial claw, then we can over trim it and cause harm to the animal. So this is a tip, but it's not actually always feasible. Many times also when we see this very pathologically changed claw, we first cut it and also check for pathology, and then we can use the medial claw, which is usually more healthy, to support this diseased claw, or we put actually a block. And let's go now through the steps. We usually use the most popular method of claw trimming in the world is Dutch method. I think this is the most commonly used method, and then there are some variations which arose from this method, which was actually published in 1985, and it still has the same steps. Just from that time, we changed some dimensions. Like in the older recommendation for the dorsal wall length from horn skin junction to the tip of the claw was 7 to 8 centimeters. But a recent study from Archer from 2015 is showing us that this length is too short for many cows. For like 8 centimeters is too short for half of the cows that are less than 4 years old, and almost 80% of cows that are over 4 years old. So, but when we extend this length to 9 centimeters, most of the cows are properly managed by this length. The second step is to...
Jose, it's really very nice to listen and learn from your valuable presentation, but we are already 1 hour late from our schedule. So I may request you to summarize the contents of your presentation so that we may get free at time as per our schedule. So please be concise and summarize the contents. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So in the second step, we just cut the sole and the wall, the lateral axial and abaxial. And then we have the first step where we need to this concave indentation to relieve the pressure from the tuberositas flexoria of the deep digital flexor, which you can see here. So it's about 1/3 of the axial sole should be removed, but we must be careful not to remove the axial wall of the hoof or of the claw. Okay, and in the fourth step, we just level the heels. It's supposed to wear the same weight, but in reality, this is not true, because here we have some studies and they show that after the removal of the horn to the right height, there is still not even distribution of weight between the two claws, as you can see in this image. Okay, then if we have pathology, we can continue with therapeutic bandaging. So to conclude this, claw trimming is necessary in most of the cows. The first rule of thumb is not to harm the animal. The goal of our hoof trimming or claw trimming is to distribute cow's weight over larger contact area of both claws and to balance weight on the parts of the claw that supposed to carry the weight. Then prevent overgrowth and also monitor for pathology, for early signs of pathology. And we must consider that today's dairy cows are larger, so the dimensions that were recommended 30 years ago are not valid anymore in large cows, high producing cows. So we need to consider this. Okay, that would be all. Thank you very much. My cat to be lifted from the wall.
Thank you very much, Jose. It was really a very nice and informative presentation, and I really appreciate for your efforts in compiling and preparing this presentation for all of us to educate us